Part 2 of my story. Like I said, what kind of mom would I be if I just gave up? Yes, I have struggled with addiction since my dad passed. I'm what they like to call a binge addict. Any type of substance that I could get my hands on, I used. I truly thought that it was numbing my pain and keeping me away from feeling it. Rewind back to 4 years ago, when we both sat down and agreed that it should be over. We had to have my mom and my brother sit down to mediate between the two of us to make sure there was no fighting during us coming up with an agreement for our kids. We both agreed that 50-50 was the best for our boys, and that's what it was for nearly 6 months. But in those 6 months, he never picked up our son, Noah. Until the new wife came along. And let's make this clear, when she first came along, yeah, I was upset, but I eventually tried to have a friendship. Sorry, I got a call. But I became friends with her, and I genuinely thought that she was there for my support to get better for my boys. So I felt comfortable enough to go to rehab finally. I felt like they were safe and I didn't have to take them, and I knew that they were going to be okay while I was there. At least so I thought. So I sit down with both of them, and I discuss going to rehab and discuss them having them while I go, so I don't have to take the boys to a rehab and subject them to other women going through detox or anything else like that. What a good mom should do, right? There was visitations that I was allowed to have during that time in my rehab stay. She only brought my one son, Noah, and when she brought him, it was her that served me my divorce papers. It wasn't even my ex-husband, and she brought my son to serve me for my divorce. She was also the one who filed it too. Kanan never got to come see me. I, of course, did my full 30 days of rehab. I was also in DBT, an acronym for dialectical behavioral therapy, and for those of you who don't know what that is, I will drop a video further explaining later. Of course, when I got out, I called and asked for the boys. But they refused for an entire year after that to even let me see them, talk to them, anything. And even though that first year hurt like hell, I made it through another year of sobriety. I had 2 years, y'all. I did that. But I had to move to St. Louis and out of Independence to get to that point. I had to change my people, my places, and my things. If you don't do those 3 things, it's really hard to get through that, especially considering my circumstances. So I hired a legal aid lawyer, and it was all fine and dandy until I had to fire her because she wasn't advocating for my children how she should have been. And all I knew was that I was my children's best advocate, and court was 2 weeks away from when I fired her. So I had to boss up and represent myself. And I did exactly that. Even with my BPD, I handled it like a soldier, let me tell you. I should have gotten my babies. The judge didn't look at any of my evidence, but looked at all of his. They claimed I needed to be supervised because my BPD was too fresh of a diagnosis. Even though I've never had a DFS case, but he has. My visitations lasted all but less than a year. I got a call 2 years ago in December saying, with the Guardian program, that he canceled my visits indefinitely, saying that my son didn't want to see me. He was 7 years old, or almost 8 at the time. That's going against court orders. He used my slip when my brother died against me, claiming that was the reason why I couldn't see my boys. My slip lasted only a couple days, and I still was allowed to see my children as long as I wasn't using when I was with them or around them. So that's been their excuse to withhold them from me for a whole entire year, again. So for my own mental health, I had to take a step back from messaging and asking to see the boys, because every time it was a mental abuse after mental abuse. Constantly downing me as a mother and a female, telling me my children didn't love me and they don't like me, telling me that my own son doesn't call me mom anymore, he calls me his birth mom, down to putting stories in my son's head saying that I tried to harm him when I never did. These people are really sick. Who does that to a little boy? All Kanan knew is that he needed and wanted his mommy, and she wasn't there. And they constantly bashed me to him. Noah can't advocate for himself. because he's special needs and nonverbal. I've never even heard my baby boy say mom. I'm also the one that had to teach this woman everything that she now knows about my son. If you were on my TikTok a couple months ago, I messaged and asked to see them again. I was so desperate at this point that I even told him, my abuser, that I would get back with him. So they went along with that and set up a visit for us to discuss me seeing the boys and us being a family. To not show and take pictures and make fun of me for sitting outside crying when they didn't show. But I've still remained hella strong. Fast forward back to my uncle's funeral. This girl shows up to my uncle's funeral even though for years she said that my family is constantly trying to get after her. So why did she show when she never knew my uncle? Good freaking question. It literally was only to hurt me, even though she's telling people that it was to support my little cousin. So fast forward today and now I'm in the hospital. When I found that out, I had the worst mental breakdown I've had in years. At this point, I know that the stuff that is going on with my ex-husband and his new wife is never going to end. So I have to keep fighting for my boys. I still can't get Kanan's scream out of my head when he said, please don't send me home to my daddy. And that was after the year that they'd kept him from me, and that was on the first day that I'd got to see him after a year. So if my story can help other women get away from their abusers, if my story can help other women get through this BPD and learn how to control it, and if my story can help you guys get through and recover, then I'm gonna keep putting my story out there.